SubhanAllah, one of the most, all the ayat of the Quran are beautiful, but one of the most profound and most beautiful of the ayat we recited tonight, which is Ayatul Kursi. And the reason for that is because, in a nutshell, Ayatul Kursi signifies that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the mubtada, and everything that comes after it is the khabar. In other words, Allahu Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal is the subject, and everything that comes after it is the predicate. Tells us about Allah. That's why it's profound. But my talk tonight is not about Ayatul Kursi. It's about the ayah that comes immediately afterwards, which is La ikraha fid deen. There is no compulsion in the religion. So many people think it means that you can't force someone to become a Muslim. And that's true, but not the absolute truth. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places this ayah here after Ayatul Kursi. Because after you've recognized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the subject and everything else is the predicate, then how can you ever force anyone to believe? Umar ibn al-Khattab, he had a slave who wasn't Muslim. And he told the slave once that if it were not for this ayah, then I would have forced you to become Muslim. Meaning that Umar ibn al-Khattab knew that even if he forced him to say the Shahada, which he could. I mean, it's Umar ibn al-Khattab, off with your head or say the Shahada. Everyone's going to say the Shahada. He could have forced him. But that's not what it means. It means that Umar ibn al-Khattab knew that even though he could tell him to say the Shahada and thereby becoming Muslim, he couldn't force him to accept it in his heart. He couldn't. No one can. And if after you present them Ayatul Kursi and nothing moves in their heart, then ya akhi, move away. There's nothing you can do. This is what La ikraha fid deen means. And it goes on. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarifies. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. Rushd is when your mind, when your aql reaches a maturity to the point where it's able to differentiate between good and evil, between what is the truth and what is falsehood. That is rushd. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when you reach this rushd, when any human being, Muslim or non-Muslim, reaches this rushd, in other words, intellectual maturity, then he says, فَمَن يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ. Then if he then makes kufr against the taghut, taghut is the shaitan in anything that leads you to other than Allah. If they make kufr against taghut, in other words, we never used it this way before, a kafir against taghut, and he then yu'min billah, and he believes in Allah, then he has taken a hold of urwatil wusqa. Now, in order to know what this urwa is over here, this handhold, I relate to you this story, and I'll end on this inshallah, because I know it's already very late. Abdullah ibn Salam, who was a Jew, and he was one of the scholars of the Jews in Medina. And when the Nabi Muhammad came to Medina, he was one of the first to go to him to see if he was actually the Prophet. And when he confirmed he was, he became Muslim. He had a dream, and in that dream he saw a massive pillar, like from the earth to the sky. And he was prompted by an angel to ascend that pillar. And when he got to the top, he saw a handle there, and he grabbed onto it. And when he woke up, it was in his hand. Wallah, I'm not joking. The handle in his dream was in his hand. And then he ran to the Prophet ﷺ with the handle, and he showed it to him. And the Prophet of Allah said, that is urwatil wusqa. That is the handhold that signifies that he has a complete grasp on Islam. Islam is that handhold. So if you hold fast to Islam, then you will make taghut, you will be a kafir against taghut, and a Muslim for Allah, Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. And if you do this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends the ayah with Sami'ul Alim. No? Say again? La infisama laha. You will never be separated from it. Once you have the handhold of Islam, really in your heart, you will never be separated from it. La infisama laha. And then he says, Innahu huwa as-Sami'ul Alim. And these are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will listen to when He calls on them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst them. Insha'Allah. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.